Gentlemen, we are about to start the event, so please take your seats. Good morning. Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Korea launch of the Human Development Report 2023-24. Before we get started, let me remind you that English-Korean interpretation is available today, so please feel free to switch to your preferred language. I'm Haejin Park, Communications and Partnership Specialist from the UNDP Seoul Policy Center. On behalf of UNDP, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, and Korea University, it is my pleasure to welcome you all today. We had a large number of pre-registrations, including participants joining online and those of us who are physically here with us in this room. So it is great to see our participants from government, international organization, think tanks, the private sector, as well as members of civil society, academia, and students. Without further ado, let me invite Dr. Ann Eubner, Director of the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, to provide her brief words of welcome. Please give her a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Haejin. Deputy Minister Kwon from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, Professor Han, Dean of College of International Studies and Graduate School of International Studies, Korea University, Mr. Pedro Conceição, dear colleague and lead author of the Human Development Report, Excellencies, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all joining us today for the Korea launch of UNDP's 2023-24 Human Development Report, both in person and also online. As many of us know, the Human Development Index, the HDI, measures progress in health, education, and living standards, represented as a value between 0 and 1. Based on pre-2019 trends, the global HDI was poised to surpass the threshold for very high human development by 2030. However, recent setbacks have derailed this trajectory. According to the 2021-2022 Human Development Report, the global HDI value fell for the first time in 2020 and 2021 after having consistently risen until 2019. Thankfully, it has since rebounded to a projected record high in 2023. Yet, this recovery is uneven. According to the recent report, only about half of the least developed countries have made similar strides. Furthermore, the disparity between countries with very high HDI and those with low HDI is growing, accompanied by a rise in populism, polarization, and mistrust. The latest Human Development Report brings to light a number of critical consequences of neglecting our interconnected challenges: the severe impacts of climate change, escalating global conflicts, and the potential for these conflicts to worsen. Despite our global interconnectedness, we are falling short in addressing these shared crises, leading to a global gridlock worsened by polarization. The latest Human Development Report reaffirms its status as a pillar of international development discourse, offering valuable insights for addressing current challenges and recommendations that propel the global dialogue on shaping future development strategies. We will dive deeper into the key insights and recommendations from the report with Pedro very soon. Our panel discussion will then offer a platform to bring these issues into perspective from the Korean perspective. We have assembled a diverse group of experts and practitioners to share their perspectives on breaking the gridlock. I hope our discussions today will bring forth practical ideas and strategies to move our development agenda forward. At the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, hosted by Korea University and with support from MOFA, we work with the Republic of Korea to tackle some of the most pressing issues of international development to eradicate poverty and reduce inequalities through the sustainable development of nations by sharing Korea's experience with countries around the world. I'm delighted to see representatives from many countries here today, as well as participants representing different generations, reflecting our shared commitment to these goals. So let me once again extend my heartfelt thanks to our guests from around the world for their contributions, our partners for their generous support, our distinguished speakers for their valuable time, Pedro traveling from New York to be with us here today, and my team of USPC for organizing this event. I wish all of us a very productive and exciting launch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. Now, moving on to the opening remarks, let me first welcome to the podium Mr. Ki-Wan Kwon, Deputy Minister for Multilateral and Global Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all the Republic of Korea launch of the UNDP Human Development Report 2023 and 24. And I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Pedro Conceição, Director of UNDP Human Development Report Office and lead author, and all UNDP colleagues for the release of this report. My gratitude also goes to the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, Korea University, and UNDP Human Development Report Office for co-hosting this event. As a long-standing partner of the UNDP, Korea has proudly sponsored the Human Development Report since 2019. This ongoing commitment underscores our dedication to fostering sustainable human development globally and within our borders. It reflects our belief in the power of comprehensive data and insightful analysis to drive positive change. This report, with the title of Breaking the Gridlock, Reimagining Cooperation in a Polarized World, comes at a crucial time. It highlights the crises we face, and they include uneven development, growing inequalities, and escalating political polarization. It also provides insightful strategies to address these challenges. Korea's own development journey reflects many themes highlighted in the report. From the ruins of war, we have become a beacon of development, ranking above many advanced countries in the Human Development Index. This progress is testament to our commitment to education, innovation, and inclusive growth, showing what can be achieved when a society invests in its people and embraces sustainable development principles. I would like to highlight three key takeaways from the report. First, by focusing on agency as a cornerstone of human development, the theme of this year's report resonates deeply with our national experience. In the early 1970s, when Korea was still a predominantly agrarian society with many rural areas suffering from poverty, the government launched a community-driven development program. And this grassroots movement fostered a sense of pride, ownership, and responsibility among the villagers, and resulting in vibrant, self-sustaining rural communities and significantly increased rural incomes. This is a powerful example of Korean people's agency, demonstrating how self-reliance, community cooperation, and active participation can drive transformative change. Second, as we navigate the complexities of the Anthropocene and the digital revolution, the report reminds us of the importance of cooperation across the borders. Our future depends on our ability to share knowledge and resources and support one another in pursuing common goals. This is particularly relevant for Korea, a nation that has thrived through global integration and mutual cooperation. Our commitment to international solidarity is further evidenced by a significant increase of over 30% in our official development assistance this year, highlighting our commitment to supporting global development and cooperation. Thirdly, the reports call for a 21st century architecture for international cooperation. This is a timely reminder of our shared responsibilities. We must enhance global public goods, from climate action to digital infrastructure, ensuring they are accessible and beneficial to all. This aligns perfectly with Korea's commitment to sustainable development and active participation in global initiatives. Korea remains steadfast in its support for the UN system and global efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. As a member of the UN Security Council for this year and next year, Korea plans to take the lead in shaping discussions on, among others, cybersecurity, climate change and security, peacekeeping and peace building, as well as women, peace and security agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, the Human Development Report is more than a set of statistics. It's a call to action, a reminder of our shared humanity, and a testament to our potential to create a better world. As we look to the future, Korea will continue to support multilateralism. Through collective action and international cooperation, we can overcome the gridlocks and build a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world. In closing, I wish you all a very fruitful and productive discussion in the upcoming sessions, and let us work together with a renewed determination to achieve our shared goals. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for the Korean government's strong continued support for the Human Development Report and also to UNDP. Now let me give the floor to Professor Jung-Sun Han, who is Dean of the College and Graduate School of International Studies at Korea University. Over to you, Dean Han.
Good morning. As a member of the Graduate School of International Studies at Korea University, which hosts the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, I am honored to welcome you all to this significant event, the launch of UNDP Human Development Report 2023 and 2024. As you are aware, the latest Human Development Report presents a somber yet resolute message. The world is falling short of its potential. The Global Human Development Index value has not returned to its pre-2019 trend, highlighting the troubling trend of accelerated polarization. The polarization manifests both globally between high and low income countries and locally with group-based polarization. To counter the accelerated polarization at both global and local levels, the report calls for collective actions to narrow agency gaps by empowering people to have control over their lives. This approach is framed by Amartya Sen's concept of, and I quote, development as a pursuit of greater freedom that enhances the ability of people to help themselves and also to influence the world, unquote. While I agree with the need to narrow the agency gap to address the uneven development and the political polarization, I am uncomfortable with the notion that this can be achieved by freeing individuals and make the free agency to co-owner of the new governance arrangements. Given the overall gloomy tone of this report, allow me to delve further into this darkness. The history of a long 20th century, which still casts its shadow, shows that freedom has too often been a condition for the workings of power and complicit in the oppressions that have accompanied nationalism, imperialism, colonialism, and even multilateral internationalism. In time of the gridlock, we may also need to critically examine whether the freedom of development designed by the established governance arrangements within the context of incomplete decolonization has been constituted of the very gridlock in order to break it. I look forward to provocative yet productive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Han, for your insights on this report. Now, before turning to the next segment, let us share with you a short video that explains the key messages of the report. Let's take a look.
The human development path has shifted downwards, and these losses may be permanent, with the weakest countries being left behind after decades of catching up. Our inability to manage shared global challenges like climate change and pandemics not only threatens our well-being, but also sows division, fear, and conflict around the world. No country alone can tackle challenges that spill across borders, whether a virus or a warming planet. And yet, we're stuck in gridlock, with paralyzing polarization spreading everywhere. We cannot break this gridlock by turning inwards. We need to reimagine how we cooperate. We can start by building an institutional architecture that enhances the provision of global public goods, helping us to see the world as more than a zero-sum game and to come together on issues where it truly matters. We can help ease polarization by fighting misperceptions that keep us apart, and by giving people the means to feel more in control of their lives. We don't have to be swept up in a whirlwind of problems, sinking deeper with each disaster. We must do better. We owe it to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet.
Okay, hold your thought, because building on what we just saw in the video, I would like to invite Mr. Pedro Conceição, Director of the Human Development Report Office in New York, and also the lead author of the report, who will give us a more comprehensive overview of the report. So let us welcome him to the podium.
Thank you so much, Yajin. Deputy Mr. Kwan, Dean Han, colleagues, thank you very much for joining us on the launch here in the Republic of Korea of the latest Human Development Report. As you would imagine, we have many launches of the report around the world, but I must say that coming here to Seoul is always one of the most special of the launches that we have. So thank you for hosting us, and I look very much forward to the discussion. So one way of starting to share the findings of the report is by giving you a sense of where we stand on human development through the lens of the Human Development Index that Anne has already described in her intervention. The Human Development Index and human development are not one and the same thing. Human development is a much broader concept, but the Human Development Index is a good way to give account of the progress that the world is making when it comes to expanding human development, which is this very simple idea that people should be allowed to live lives to their full potential. So here's what's happening when it comes to the evolution of the Human Development Index over the last few years. As Anne mentioned, there's been a decline in the Human Development Index, or there was a decline in the Human Development Index in both 2020 and 2021, but a rebound in 2022, and in 2023, the level of the global average Human Development Index is expected to reach its highest value ever on record, on all three dimensions: standards of living, health, and education. But you also see that the path of improvement in the Human Development Index has shifted downwards. So that shaded part that you see on the graph represents a loss of human potential that can be very long-lasting if the path stays below the pre-2019 trend, can be even permanent if we don't manage to shift the path forward. So I think this is the first note of concern that I would like to leave on the table, because sometimes we think of the shocks of COVID-19 as something temporary that you overcome and then we go back to normal. Well, there's the potential for us to be confronting very long-lasting, potentially permanent losses in human development. And secondly, we see also an increase in the difference in the Human Development Index between the countries at the very top and at the very bottom. As you can see on this chart, over many years, over decades in fact, this difference has declined. That's what the line shows, that the difference between the countries at the very top and bottom of the Human Development Index has gone down for many years, but this trend has reversed. And we are now seeing an increase in the distance between countries at the bottom and at the top. Our colleagues at the World Bank about a month ago released a report that came to similar findings. They called it, I think it was a very good title, The Great Reversal. So what we're seeing here is a great reversal in a process of convergence where countries were coming closer together when it comes to standards of living, when it comes to human development, and we are now seeing a process of divergence. I want to emphasize the importance of this divergence in a context in which the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development includes something that's a pledge to leave no one behind. It's a pledge to reach the furthest behind first. And this data suggests that we are not doing it, that we are falling short when it comes to fulfilling this pledge. So these issues of inequalities re-emerging between those at the top and at the bottom is very concerning. Moreover, we also see that there is an increase in people reporting feeling stressed, feeling that life is throwing at them more than they can handle. As you can see on the chart, this increases in the countries in which there is an increase in the perceptions of living stressful lives, is increasing across all levels of the Human Development Index. So why are we in this situation? There are certainly many reasons, but the report shines a spotlight on the fact that the world is falling short when it comes to manage shared challenges and opportunities that spill across borders. So there's much that countries can do on their own and should probably do. But a lot of the situation that we now confront results from the fact that we did not manage the COVID-19 pandemic as well as we could, that we are continuing to fail to manage climate change, and that we need to find a way of managing these shared challenges. And one of the reasons why it's becoming difficult, according to our analysis, is a context of increased political polarization. Political polarization is when societies become divided in groups that are opposed and belligerent. And this poisons cooperation both within countries and across countries. So there's a sort of paralyzing political polarization. And one of the implications of this political polarization is that there is a disenchantment in many parts of the world with the political system. 2/3 of the global population today does not feel that their voice is heard in their political system. And what you see on this chart is what we call a democracy paradox. On the horizontal axis, you see the percentage of people that support democracy as an ideal. And you see that over time, the dots represent responses to whether people support democracy or not. The dots show that this has stayed above 90% or thereabouts. So very strong, steady, stable support for democracy as an ideal. And on the vertical axis, you have the responses to the question whether people support strong leaders that may undermine democracy by not respecting the outcome of an election, for instance, or decisions of the parliament. That share has been increasing. That's why the dots sort of move forward. And in fact, today, more than half of the global population would support such leaders. That's why we have that sort of red bar at the top. So we surpassed the 50% mark. So according to the analysis in the report, this suggests, or is one of the reasons why we are confronting a gridlock. At the time in which we would need to cooperate, perhaps more than ever, we are seemingly stuck. So this is the gloomy part of the report that Dinhan alluded to, but the report is also a way of suggesting ways forward. And I will highlight 3 ways forward that have to do with an attempt or an invitation for us to reimagine cooperation. So first, very much acting on agency. Dinhan has already cited Amartya Sen, and I will give you another quote from him. Amartya Sen used to say that we should look at people not as patients, beneficiaries of services, or passive recipients of assistance, but also as agents. So enhancing agency is something that very much the report advocates for. One way of measuring or accounting for agency is by asking people whether they feel in control of their lives. Well, our report finds that half of the world's population today does not feel in control of their lives, so does not feel they have agency. And the chart that you see on the screen shows that this perception of not being in control of one's life, of lacking agency, increases the more insecure people feel. The fact that people feel insecure is related not only with increasing gaps in agency, but also in increasing distrust. It's also reflected in the fact that when people feel insecure, they are attracted to the extremes of the political spectrum, both on the left and on the right. And to that extent, perceptions of insecurity also drive the context of political polarization that I alluded to earlier. Political polarization is something that has increased in 2/3 of the world's countries over the last decade or so. The second idea the report puts forward is by recognizing that we often agree on more than we think we do. Here is some evidence on the issue of climate change. Climate change is one of the issues that in many societies has become polarized, with some people believing that we're doing too much and others believing that we are not doing enough. And this is one of the sources of tension and polarization in many societies. Yet, when people are asked if they would be willing to make a personal financial sacrifice, so this is not believing in climate change, it's not about climate denialism, it's whether they would be willing to make a personal financial sacrifice to mitigate climate change. Almost 70% of the global population said yes, they would be willing to do so. And yet, when they are asked if they believe people around them also share this conviction, the percentage drops to a little over 40%. Why does this matter? Because addressing challenges like climate change does not depend only on the individual commitment or the individual motivation. It requires collective action. So it depends not only on what people individually think and how committed they are to addressing one of these challenges, but also what others around them think. So piercing through this fog of misperception, I think we call it in the report, is one of the most effective ways of not only changing beliefs, but actually changing behavior towards enabling people to act on these challenges on which they actually agree on much more than they think. And then finally, and I'll conclude, more in the international context, investing in the provision of global public goods. This reflects the need to consider that we lived in a shared planet that is undergoing rapid changes. Climate change is an example, but there are many others. As Deputy Minister alluded to, sometimes this is described as the Anthropocene. So there are many interdependencies that we need to manage together by the simple fact that we lived on a shared planet. Also a context in which the digital transformation is accelerating patterns of disinformation that spread across borders. So addressing these shared challenges through the provision of global public goods is something that is crucial, and failure to do so will actually result potentially in an increase in inequalities. So what you see on this chart is what is likely to happen from now until the end of the century when it comes to changes in mortality rates as a result of climate change. So what do we see on the chart? We see that if we don't mitigate climate change under scenarios of high greenhouse gas emissions, countries with a very high levels of the Human Development Index will actually have a decline. That's what the green line shows in deaths associated with climate change. But look at the lines at the top of the chart. The lower the level of the Human Development Index, the higher the increase in deaths. This is about people. This is not about temperature. It's not about abstractions. It's about what's going to happen to people. So remember, we started our conversation with a graph that showed the increase in inequality between those at the top and at the bottom retrospectively over the last 4 years, something that is increasing. This is a picture of what the future may hold if we fail to address these shared challenges. So the message of the report on this dimension is not a message that countries all of a sudden will cease to have differences, will cease to compete with each other on the economy, on technology, will cease to have territorial disputes. That's a fact of life and is going to continue. But that's not incompatible with the notion that countries will need to come together to find arenas in which they need to cooperate on aspects that are not zero-sum, in which a country winning does not have to be at the expense of others, to address these shared challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Can I ask you to stay at the podium? Oh, here, if you could please stay at the podium, because I think after this very insightful overview of the report, there may be questions from the floor, specifically on the report. So I would like to take a few questions from the floor. And I know there were also some questions coming in through the pre-registration. So
I thought I was off the hook.
not just yet, Pedro. So can I see a show of hands of yes? Can somebody please, sir, is the table in front? Yes, the microphone, please.
Just a statistic technical question. I was a little bit surprised that under a high emission scenario, the number of deaths in high HDI countries will lower? I would be interested for your idea on that.
Can we take one more question maybe, and then Pedro, you can respond to both?
Sure.
Thank you, Pedro. Nabil, I'm the ambassador of Pakistan. First of all, HDI is very close to my heart because of Mehboob ul Haq, a Pakistani who did it. And it was really good to see that in your report, Mariam Sumro is one of the contributors. And she started her career with me as an intern in New York. So it's amazing that things are happening for her as well. My question is also very similar to the earlier question, which is, and I'm dealing with climate change as well. I am the chair of the SPI and UNFCCC. And the fact that HDI is now more and more concentrating on climate change is really good, because that is something that a lot of people don't understand, that climate change is not just temperature anymore.
Exactly.
It is actually impacting lives. And so that's why it is important that these kind of things come into the public more and more so people realize what's going on. But then the green line in that graph, the HDI versus climate graph, that actually would take the developed countries off the hook. So how do you square that hole? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great questions, and they actually allow me to do a little bit of propaganda of a platform that's called Human Climate Horizons. So if you have your phones, you can just Google it, and you'll be directed to this platform. That is the foundation for the graph that showed that at the very end. So what this platform does is to provide information about different scenarios, next decade, middle of the century, end of the century, of the human implications of climate change and the different emission scenarios. So one has to do with implications that changes in temperature will have on mortality, but we also have data on labor supply, the ability of people to work, energy consumption. We're going to have had information on food productivity, because I think one of the contributions that we're trying to make is precisely to your point. The implications of climate change are not abstractions. It's not about temperature. It's about what's meant for people and the way in which they are going to shape prospects for people. In addition to temperature as a climate hazard, we already provided information on sea level rise as another hazard, and the implications this has to destroying infrastructure and livelihoods actually in coastal communities in many parts of the world. So again, I think the scientific data is known, and this draws from the IPCC scenarios and from the scientific scenarios. But the contribution we're making is drawing this link with what it means for people. Now, why does an increase in temperatures result in a decline in deaths, in mortality rates in some parts of the world? Because humans are made to live within a temperature range. So very high temperatures and very low temperatures are both dangerous for human health. And in fact, today, in today's world, deaths from cold weather are actually higher than deaths from hot weather. So as temperature increases, what will happen is that deaths associated with cold weather are going to decrease, deaths associated with warm weather are going to increase. The net effect of this is what you saw in this slide. Richer countries tend to be located in higher latitudes. Higher latitudes where now there are very high rates of mortality or relative rates of mortality associated with cold, not so much with warm weather, hot weather. But this is likely to be flipped. The second point I would make is that this platform that I alluded to provides information not only what happens across countries, but also within countries. And I think this is something that we need to look at very carefully, because the disparity of climate impacts within countries are also likely to exacerbate inequalities that already exist within countries. Take Brazil, for instance. Brazil is a country in which increases in temperature are going to be much higher in the north and northeast of the country, much lower in the south of the country. The south of the country is the part of the country that's already richer, more capable to deal with these challenges. The north of the country is poorer on average. So climate change is likely to exacerbate not only inequalities across countries, which is what I showed, but if you go to the platform, you will also have very granular information that highlights the impact of climate change in exacerbating inequalities also within countries. Thank you.
Looking at the clock, and I think we have time for just one more question from the floor. Yes, I think time is.
Thank you for a very insightful overview of the report. As I was reading the report, I noticed that the report is recommending a lot about the global public goods, and I was wondering if does that take away the importance and the relevance of the development assistance?
That's a very, very good question. So let me first reiterate what the report suggests. The report suggests that in addition to international flows of resources that are motivated by humanitarian concerns, saving lives, or development assistance, which is the idea that richer countries provide resources for lower income countries to have the means to make the investments and the decisions within countries to meet their development aspirations. We need a dedicated track that looks at these shared challenges. So this does not imply that there's not going to be a need of resources to flow from rich countries to poor countries, but the logic is different. The logic is to enable these countries also to contribute to global public goods. You know, I think Janice is here, so she'll speak to this. But my interpretation of the World Bank change of their tagline from shared prosperity and poverty reduction to shared prosperity and poverty reduction on a livable planet reflects also this idea. So it's not, now it has to be done in the right way. If the resources that are going to go into this third track are going to come out of official development assistance, that's a problem, because then it sort of defeats the purpose. The idea here is that we need a systematic allocation of resources for global public goods. And one way of thinking about this is that these resources should be paying for the incremental costs that low-income country will have to undertake to contribute to a global public good. And that's already the logic of some of the financial instruments we have, like the Global Environmental Facility, for instance. But it's something that is done not at the scale that is required to address shared challenges. In addition, the report shows that there's an argument also that the public may be demotivated. So some people, the public in some high-income countries, is very much supportive of official development assistance, particularly humanitarian assistance, because it's something very visceral that people respond to when they see others suffering. But what the report suggests is that the people that tend to support humanitarian assistance, development assistance, are also the ones that are likely to support the provision of global public goods. So instead of seeing an argument for this third track as something that substitutes or replaces official development assistance or humanitarian assistance, the argument is that something that should complement, and that there is not a risk that this is going to erode into the public support for international transfers, because again, the segments of the population that support one are also the ones that are likely to support the other.
Thank you so much, Pedro, and for these very interesting questions. For those questions we couldn't answer due to time constraints, I hope you can catch up with Pedro over lunch once the lunch is over. So now it's time for the panel discussion. So may I invite our panelists, as well as Anne and Pedro, to take a seat at the front. We will be putting up the tables on the stage. The session will be moderated by the USBC Director, Dr. Anne Eubner. As the tables look ready, if you could take your seats at the front, please. All right, the panel seems almost ready now, so let me then hand over to Anne, please. Over to you. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Hedgen. I'm honored to moderate this important discussions, which will be devoted to reflecting on the HDR findings just introduced by Pedro. So we are here with 4 panelists representing different sectors of the development community in Korea, who will reflect on several of the key themes covered in the report from various angles. In part 1, we will hear from our first 2 speakers on how we can build a new architecture for global public goods to foster collective action at the speed and scale needed to address globally shared challenges. I will invite participants in the room later on to raise questions to our 2 speakers during the Q&A session. And as Hedgen mentioned, we also collected some questions during event pre-registration, so we will try to address some of those as well as best as possible in the time limits that we have. Our first panelist is Ms. Jeon Janice Ryu, head of the International Finance Corporation Korea. IFC, a member of the World Bank Group, is the largest global development institution focused exclusively on the private sector, supporting developing countries to achieve sustainable growth through finance. Ms. Ryu will present some of the key efforts made by IFC to channel private finance to address global challenges. Please, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It is an honor and privilege to be part of this launch event for the Human Development Report 2023 and 2024 in Korea. This report, as always, stands as a beacon illuminating the multifaceted progress and ongoing challenges within human development. Today, I'm here to discuss the crucial role that international finance institutions such as IFC play in this landscape, and how IFC leverages our investment to provide to support private sector development in emerging markets and enhance global public goods in developing countries. At IFC, we recognize that the private sector is the engine of the sustainable economic growth and development. By financing and supporting businesses, we empower communities, generate employment, and foster innovation. This in turn leads to improved living standards and reduces poverty. Our mission is deeply aligned with the core objectives of human development. As global crises compound and public resources dwindle, mobilizing private capital has never been more crucial to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. An estimated $4 trillion in annual investment is needed to meet these goals in emerging markets and developing economies by 2030. Good news is that the availability money is not an issue. Global banks, institutional investors, and asset managers hold approximately $400 trillion in asset under management. Just 1% of reallocation could bridge the SDG financing gap. And this is where IFIs and IFC can play a role. So the screen actually moved forward. So for the next 10 minutes or so, allow me to briefly introduce what IFC does and highlight how we are making a tangible impact on the ground. As introduced by Anne, IFC is a member of the World Bank Group, and the last year, World Bank Group has embraced a new vision. Pedro mentioned to create a world free from poverty on a livable planet, and we are undertaking an internal reform to deliver more effective One World Bank solutions that fully harness our public and private sector tools. In an effort to address global challenges, the World Bank Group has formed 6 global challenge programs to tackle pressing global issues and drive sustainable development, and they are energy, digitalization, health and food and nutrition, forest and water and climate. When it comes to IFC, we were established in 1956, and just 12 years after IBRD, and IFC has over 100 offices in 98 countries, with almost 60% of our staff based outside headquarters. And since its establishment, IFC has provided over $300 billion financing in worldwide, and we are AAA rated by S&P and Moody's. IFC is owned by 186 member countries, and we work with over 2,000 clients worldwide. In fiscal year 2023, which is last year, IFC committed a record $43.7 billion to provide to private companies and financial institutions in developing countries, which represents 79% of growth compared to a decade ago. And our target for the fiscal year 2024 is to deliver $50 billion. And the mandate of IFC Korea is to support Korean companies and financial institutions entering into emerging markets. And since the reestablishment of the office in 2014, IFC provided financing worth of over $7.6 billion in long-term commitment for projects involving Korean sponsors and partners. And these are our products and services. IFC delivers integrated financing solutions covering from investment to advice and mobilization. But the way that we do is through key strategic areas. One is we target investment in sectors and regions that are traditionally underserved, including rural areas, low-income countries, and SMEs. Investing in most challenging markets such as fragile and conflict-affected states and low-income IDA countries is one of our priorities, and we have people on the ground to serve those markets. And second, IFC actively promotes gender equality by investing in projects that empower women economically. This includes financing businesses that are women-owned or led, and those that create significant opportunities for women as employers, suppliers, and customers. For example, IFC Banking on Women program works with the financial institutions to design products tailored to women entrepreneurs, enhancing their access to credit and financial services. And IFC is the first impact investor with over 65 years of experience. Our work in environmental and social governance, ESG, dates back to the early 1990s, sorry for the 10 years, yeah. And in 2003, we helped launch the Equator Principles, a global benchmark for sustainable project finance. In 2006, IFC launched its sustainability framework, including environmental and social performance standards, which has been adopted by numerous financial institutions around the world. Now, when it comes to climate finance, IFC is a global leader in mobilizing private capital to address climate change in emerging markets. With a record $14.4 billion in climate finance last year, IFC is the only multilateral development bank with a track record and expertise to create bankable climate projects, de-risk investment, and crowd in private sectors at scale. We focus on sectors that account for the lion's share of the global greenhouse gas emission, such as energy, transport, cities, manufacturing, and food and agriculture. And IFC has led the way among MDBs in the Paris alignment rollout of assessing investment against the mitigation and adaptation, the goals of the Paris Agreement. As of last year, July, IFC has committed to align 85% of our new investment and 100% from next year with the Paris Agreement. And when it comes to innovative financing solutions, we believe blended finance is a key strategic tool in addressing global public goods in most challenging markets. Concessional funds are combined with IFC's own capital to mitigate risk and attract investment into projects with a significant development impact but perceived are too risky by private investors alone. Just an example, when it comes to IDA funding, we mobilized $5 in private investment for every $1 from IDA private sector window. And when it comes to climate, we have a 1-to-10 ratio. Another innovative finance solution that we deploy is green, blue, and social bonds. Since the World Bank issued the world's first green bond in 2008, the market has come a long way, with issuance surpassing the $1 trillion mark, and IFC alone has issued over $10 billion in green bonds over the past decade. And recently, we have issued social bonds to finance projects that address social issues such as healthcare, education, affordable housing, and job creation, especially in developing countries. Blue bonds are a relatively new type of debt instrument designed to finance projects aimed at promoting ocean conservation and sustainable use of marine resources. And these are the partners that we work with to mobilize blended finance. And as you can see, one of the work that we do with the UNHCR is refugee issues. You may follow, the number of forced displacement is increasing. And when people are encamped, they don't stay there on a temporary basis. In the case of Kenya, Kakuma camp, which hosts over 60 billion people, the average of duration the people stay there is more than decades. People are born there, they live there, so humanitarian aid is not enough. And we observed private sector activities. People establish their own small business, and they are receiving remittances. So together with the UNHCR, we are trying to address this issue with the private sector solutions. And when it comes to Korean engagement, Korean companies are second to none in terms of EV value chain. They have technology, and they have intention to go into the different markets. So these are the examples that we work together. We work with finance institutions, supporting them issue green bond, social bond, and blue bond. And we support them setting up manufacturing site in countries like Haiti. And we work with them in countries like Nepal to increase their electricity up to 20%. That's what Korea partnership is coming. We are working together with them. And just closing, I have a few thoughts how we can work together better and step up our game in addressing global public goods. The potential for private capital to drive development impact is immense. Yet significant barriers from regulatory uncertainty to political risk to foreign exchange exposure still impede the flow of private capital into emerging markets. We need to work together with the government to create an enabling environment that could incentivize sustainable finance and responsible investment practices. Public-private partnerships, PPP, plays a crucial role in building sustainable financing systems for global public goods. By leveraging the strength of each partner, PPPs can mobilize larger and more diverse sources of funding for initiatives that promote public goods. And they can mitigate the financial and operational risk associated with a large-scale project. Innovative financial instruments, we need to continue to promote them, such as impact investing, green bonds, social bonds, and blended finance mechanisms to mobilize capital for global public goods while avoiding greenwashing. And technology serves a powerful catalyst for private sector development in emerging markets. For instance, digital technologies are key tools to bridge the health service gap in emerging markets, given the potential of these new innovations to reach underserved patients and augment clinical capacity and capabilities. And lastly, we cannot do this alone. We will need to foster international cooperation and coordination to address global challenges collectively. So let us continue to work together, leveraging our strengths and resources, and to build a better future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. Now we have a climate expert, Mr. Don-Min Lee, the director of the Center for Strategic Planning at the National Institute of Green Technology, NIGT. Prior to this role, he was a senior researcher at the Center for Global Business at NIGT, where he focused on establishing a technical cooperation system for green transition. Mr. Lee will discuss NIGT's efforts and ambitions to achieve climate stability. Mr. Lee, over to you, please.
Thank you, and thank you for your introduction. And before I make my presentation, I have to let you know I prepared my presentation in Korean. So please interpreter if you are not familiar with Korean. Yeah.
Yes. When I first was offered this opportunity and was invited, I naturally thought that it would be a Korean audience because it was a conference being held in Korea. So I'd like for you to bear with me. Thank you. Let me begin. The title of my presentation is Achieving Climate Stability, and it may seem like a very grandiose title, but looking at the 2023-2024 HD report, I wanted to first look at how the cooperation was taking place with regards to climate change, and second, the scope of how my organization is working to achieve these goals, and then why human development is important in light of all of this. Pedro also mentioned some of this, and I think in the report there were three things that were very insightful. One is, after COVID-19, the HDI values showed very unstable change because there was a big gap between the high-income and low-income countries, and that gap was growing. And this was something that I had already been thinking of, but I think it was meaningful that we actually had figures to support what we already knew. And what was also interesting was that this could actually lead to death rates and higher deaths. So I think as to us who are researching issues with regards to international development, the results were very, very useful. Also, the recommendations in the report, which underlined the importance of global public goods and the importance of international cooperation to this end. We believe that this was also very meaningful, and I'd like to focus on that part also in my presentation. You're all well aware of the concept of public goods, I'm sure. So I'd like to start there. On the left, you see a small chart prepared by the IMF, and you can see where public goods are, and environment is included as a public good. When we speak of public goods, a public good is a good that is non-rivalry and also non-excludable. That is to say that it is all shared by other countries, and healthcare is also, public health is also included here. I want to focus on the environment part. And also, the Stockholm Resilience Center regularly reports planetary boundaries. What this is it shows you the limits of how long we can withstand these climatary pressures and for how long. And you can see that we are going past the limits, past the boundaries as time goes past. In 2009, we had gone past the boundaries of only 3 of the 9 boundaries, but among the 9 boundaries in 2023, we have already gone past the limits in 6 of these areas worldwide. Also, it shows that all of these 9 boundaries, they are all interlinked, such as the changes in the land system and ocean acidification and ozone depletion. All of these are interlinked. So, for instance, if there is a huge plantation that is built in Latin America or somewhere in the southern hemisphere, there will be changes in the land system, and this will create environmental issues, which will also impact biodiversity. And when you change this land, what you usually have to do is to burn down the existing forests, and this will impact the quality of the air and lead to gases as well. Also, if you are going to maintain that kind of land, you will have to use biochemicals, which will lead to land issues and ultimately also pollute the ocean. And this will also lead to an increase in CO2. So all of this is interlinked environmentally, and so this is a very important insight that we can draw from this Stockholm report. So what can we do and what are we doing in the public and private sector? And there are many, many efforts, but I'd just like to highlight a couple of them. I'd like to focus on 2 of the boundaries that I mentioned. First, with regard to the ozone layer. We have the Montreal Protocol. I'm sure that you have heard of this. In the mid-1980s, there was an awareness that we had to do something about ozone depletion, and the Montreal Protocol was signed. And therefore, as a result of this, specific chemicals were banned. However, did the chemicals actually decrease? Well, we saw that impact 20 years down the road. And we could actually see the ozone depletion being reversed. So what this shows is that these efforts take time. It takes more than 2 decades for these political actions to actually be realized in the public sector, that is. And recently, there have been a lot of discussions about plastics and how the plastics are impacting our oceans. And these decisions and agreements have been made roughly from 2022. And in Busan, at the end of this year, we are working towards coming towards a final agreement. And recently, although there was a great meeting in Ottawa in Canada, it seems that we are not proceeding. What I'm trying to say is that it takes a long, long time for us to reach environmental agreements, but it's inevitable. We have to go through this. And the question that we have is, can we make this quicker, perhaps looking towards the private sector? Well, you know that the UNFCCC is focused on climate change issues, cutting down on emissions, and carbon budgets have been proposed. Of course, are we going to set the scenario at 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees? There are different discussions, but if we set it at 2 degrees, they say that we only have about 5 years left in the carbon budget, a budget that will only last us about 5 years or so. Then in the private sector, what do we have? We have discussions about the VCM, the voluntary carbon market. Things like Verra and Golden Standards are efforts that have been put forth by the private sector, and they have received a lot of traction. You can see how the related markets have expanded very recently. But what issues this have led to is the market size shrunk by about 25%. Of course, all of the prices, the transactions prices are different, but there was a drop of about 16% or so on average. What this shows is that because this is a private sector-led effort, there was an over-evaluation to begin with, and that these standards were not verified or they were not embraced globally. So when we approach climate issues, the issue is that the public sector takes too long, and the private sector, they are a lot more agile, but they cannot come up with a universal platform that everyone can agree upon. So each have their issues. With regards to this, I'd like to share what our organization, the NIGT, does. We do a lot of things, but within the UNFCCC, there is a CTCN which focuses on the technical side of the climate efforts. And if technical issues take a lot of time to examine, we have NDEs that have been selected, and our Ministry of Technology in Korea does this. And we also support the national designated entity, the Ministry of Science and ICT. And so to developing countries, we propose certain technologies and provide them with support so that they can research these related issues. It's only been about 10 years since we were established, but already we have 556 international cooperation projects. And you can see here the various projects that have been conducted and are currently ongoing. Of course, I can't cover everything, but these are some recent projects. Just 2 of them I'd like to share with you. First is a microgrid case that we conducted with Honduras. It was a validity test that we conducted with them, and this feasibility study could help them as they work towards financing. And the second was coming up with an early warning system using ICT in the Mekong River Basin. We did a technical appraisal, and also we linked this to an ODA to see if it was feasible. Not only these projects, but we also have various policy projects, policy studies that are conducted. In the past, there was not a system with regards to climate change adaptation technology. So we took part in a joint study to come up with a classification system. And we were also selected as a 2020 Good Achievement by Investment Award. We also believe that research has to be practical. So we have the IFC and AKCF So we have a plan or roadmap of how our studies will actually lead to practical changes on the field. Also, we think it's very important that we support capacity building as well. So cooperation is not only needed with other researchers, but also governments, international organizations, and also the grassroots community. So with that, I'd like to wrap up my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ryu and Mr. Lee, for your presentations. We would now like to open up the floor for the first round of questions, very much focusing on the topics of reshaping global finance and achieving climate stability. Are there any questions on this in the room? I will take a quick look. Please help me if I can't see past the columns. Yes, there's a question there.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for your wonderful presentation regarding the research results. So I'm Yongbin Choi, currently working as a chief researcher in GBSI, a youth-led future generation climate research group. So as mentioned earlier in Mr. Lee's presentation, I think the platform that provided by public to enhance the private investment, especially for climate response, can be the Article 6.2 and Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement. So in this kind of aspect, I think the support for implementing Article 6-based projects, especially in developing countries, are so important in nowadays situation. So in this kind of nowadays situation, what is the role of NIGTs to provide support to the developing countries, and also what are the kind of opinions and insights of World Bank or World Bank IFC regarding the Article 6 related issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting question to Mr. Lee. Before I give Mr. Lee the floor, let me just see if we also have a question for Ms. Ryu. And if we don't have it here in the room, then allow me to go back to a question that we generated during the pre-registration. And let me pose that question on behalf of our offline participant, Ms. Sojong Park, who is the Impact Square manager. She is asking, how is private finance being utilized in development cooperation? And to what extent is the rigidity of traditional development cooperation becoming more flexible? And maybe, Ms. Ryu, you can reflect a little bit on that. First of all, Mr. Lee, over to you to help answer the question from the room.
All right. Okay. 네, 한국말로.
Yes, I will also be consistent and respond in Korean. The question regarded Article 6.1, 6.2 in the Paris Agreement, and of course, I'm not an expert per se, but I was provided consultation during the COP process, and I've met with other people involved. I think with the CDM to become an SDM system, there are some important things from the developing countries that will be reflected, but things are in the discussion phase. So I think it would be better to talk about what's happening in Korea rather than the CDM, how we are approaching to mitigation. What we are doing is we are deciding to contact countries individually. We have Vietnam, and the other two countries, I think it was Gabon in Africa, and the third country I don't remember, but we are doing one-on-one agreements with countries to pledge their emission cuts and to also do this with corporate, but it's not easy. We have the JCM system in Japan. And I also think that this could be a reference for us, because the JCM framework has become established in Japan. And so the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Industry in Korea are currently uncovering these projects and are providing finance.
And for the question, how does traditional international development plays contributing to the public goods? I don't think it's one way or the other. We need to continue to work together in a development cooperation, but we need more. I think that is a key trend that we see, and that's how we can only step up our game. Let me give you one example involving Korean partner. In Indonesia, as you know, Jakarta, the city itself is sinking. Why? Because of there are many factors, but one of the key factors is that people are pumping a lot of groundwater. The piped water access in the city itself is less than 10%. So clean water is a public good, but who's going to, in a way, supply this treated clean water to people in Jakarta and prevent the further disaster of the country? So one of the projects that we work together with K-Water and Korea Exim Bank is Garian Water Treatment Plant near Jakarta. The first half is you need to build a dam, and you need to build a conveyance pipeline, and then you need to build a plant that can treat the water for clean water, basically so you can drink from the tap. So this first part is a highly ODA concentrated project because it doesn't generate any profits to private sector companies. So Korea Exim Bank provided concessional funding to build a dam and a conveyance pipe. And the commercial part where we think they can generate profitability and also impact is this water treatment plant. That's where we work together with the K-Water and ADB and making a bankable project that could eventually be completed and provide water. So that is one example that we can utilize concessional funding and commercial funding and make a project viable. That doesn't mean that traditional development cooperation is not necessary. It's more than ever we need those cooperation. Korea is developing government-to-government G2G projects to serve this not commercially viable project. And then for private sector investors, we can come in at the later to complete the project. And that example is also aligned with public-private partnerships. Recently, World Bank has introduced hybrid PPP. IFC advises government as a neutral broker to mobilize private sector for certain large-scale projects, roads, airport, and electricity. Because the government doesn't have enough resources, they need private sector capital. But then what we realize that 50% of developing countries are on high debt. How could they actually share the risk of this kind of high-scale project? So that's when World Bank itself can come in, provide highly concessional funding. So IFC will advise the government, recruit competitive, independent private sector to come in, and World Bank can mobilize their own concessional funding to support the government. So it is called hybrid PPP. And I think we are going to see more of those projects in the future And then that's the right move to address the needs of public goods in developing countries. Thank you.
Kamsahamnida, thank you very much. I know that these very short responses most likely do not entirely do justice to the depth of the question, but as Hejin mentioned earlier at the beginning, the purpose is to inspire further reflection and discussion, so please feel free to continue this discussion over lunch and beyond today as well. Now, let's move on to the second part of our panel discussion. We will again hear from two speakers on their insights on how we can narrow agency gaps, overcome polarization, and collaborate together to break the gridlock. We have Mr. Jae-sung Kwak, Vice President of Korea Association of International Development and Cooperation. Mr. Kwak is also a professor at the Graduate School of Pan-Pacific International Studies at Kyunghee University. Mr. Kwak will speak on the topic of promoting development cooperation and multilateralism to contribute to the provision of global public goods. Mr. Kwak, over to you, please.
Okay, thanks for allowing this. I'm landlocked here, so I propose to come down here. So hope this works perfectly. Camera's okay? Camera 1, 2, ready. Right. On behalf of Korea Association of International Development and Cooperation and Kyunghee University, thank you very much. And I welcome all of you to the session. And I feel extremely happy and also lucky to be the third presenter, because the first two presenter already gave a wonderful introduction to what was going on my presentation. I know you are all very hungry over the models and cases, and I'm not talking about the lunch. You have more intellectual hunger over the cases. So I bring actually the cases of the international public goods and multilateral corporations, climate change, and also private sector engagement, and all those salient issues all in one basket in Cambodia. So for the next 10 minutes, this is a kind of word cloud that I put all together that I should tell you. And for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to briefly introduce about actual project, what we are actually doing in the transportation sector. The transportation sector now is responsible for 15% of greenhouse gas emission in the world. Out of this 15%, 12% on the road sector. The situation in Southeast Asia is more actually problematic here, because more people are using the motorcycle as a means of their transportation than anywhere else. We are talking about now 200 million units of a motorcycle. Imagine 200 million units of motorcycle whole in Southeast Asia, generating fumes, greenhouse gases, and pollutants around. This not only generates the pollutions, also it damages the people's health. When you're getting into the age of 12, you learn how to ride it. And then you start to ride it, and then you face all those pollutants in the street, in the urban circle. And then you got lung problem, you have eyesight problem, and you have liver problem. All sort of problems are already embedded here. And also, if you're a rider, you may understand. If you ride it, you just ride it. If you go to 100 meters, 200 meters, 500 meters, you never walk. So this lack of exercise make people lazy. Not only lazy, but also they undermine their health. Okay, we focus on the public goods, not health issues. So this greenhouse problem is a big issue of the urban circle due to this motorcycles with gasolines. So, this is a model. Several years back, the owner of the company called Barry Woods approached me and casted me an idea about what about designing a project that transforming all those problematic motorcycles in South Asia to the electronic bike. Okay, then let's find some opportunities. So we knocked the door to one of the Korean agencies, And then they're very much welcoming our project, and then project begins. The project model is basically, we introduce the battery swapping e-mobility, and as well as they introduce these charging stations here and there. Battery swapping means if your rider comes into the battery station and they can swap the battery and the new battery will be placed on that. They can go immediately. You don't have to charge it by yourself. So off you go and you can ride it at least 80 kilometers a day, which is enough for the ordinary people to commuting. And then after using the battery, we can reuse the battery, because if the battery level lowers than 70% its capacity, you are not able to use in the transportation. But still, the battery has electricity. So you can give it to the schools, you can give it to the hospitals, and the off-grid household can use it as an energy storage system. Then we can reuse it, and then later, then when the battery is gone, that you can have a battery recycling system by establishing the battery recycling factory there. So we process the black powder, and the black powder can be reprocessed, and you extract the lithium, mangan, cobalt, all those rare materials, and to be reused or remanufacture the battery again. So this is kind of a circular economy model, not only the simply transforming the traditional bike to the e-bike. So we all have that. Hidden extra here is we don't sell the battery to the consumers. That means that considerably lower the actual cost of the motorcycle. Usually the per average cost of the motorcycle's battery is as much as $700, which is a considerable burden for the consumers. However, company do not sell, instead company owns, and they reuse and recycle. And finally, we established this recycling model. And that actually attracted many donors, not only the Korea Energy Agency, but also KOICA. KOICA's program, Inclusive Business Solution, they supported this program. So those two implementers, and Berryworth and Kodak, and they partnered also with the Cambodian Ministry of Mines and Energy, also Cambodian Ministry of Transportation as well. And then where we put those old battery charging stations, we need a land, and then we need a place. So we collaborated with the Uri Bank, which is eager to spread its business in Cambodia. So bank means they have a space, they have a branch, they have some of the branch spaces were given for the battery charging stations. So we are establishing a couple of them. And in the future, there will be more. Also, we discussed with the Royal University of Phnom Penh. They already have the incubator building, so taking advantage of this location. So on campus, the charging station will be done. If you get into the campus of IUPP, you'll be surprised to see there are thousands of bikes around. So there are all those markets. For the students, we have more favorable financial schemes as well. And then there's another hidden extra, which is not a good news for the company, because the company is more burdensome because we don't sell the battery. So every single unit they sell, the company are able to earn money. That means company need investment. The company need more financial instrument to sustain this model. Then we knocked the door to the Korea Exim Bank, and also we are discussing with the British International Investment and private sector venture capitals so that they can invest more to sustain this model. Okay, you understand what we are going on. Okay, this is a current model, and now and you can just take a look at this, how many chargers and how much greenhouse reductions can be achieved in the future projection. And we are talking about factory, and also this is a tour model. And in Siem Reap, we launched this e-bike tour model, and then tourists can rent out, and they can do their own privately guided tours in the Angkor Wat, which is World Heritage. So if you visit, please knock the door of Papil Station, and you can rent out and have a wonderful experience in exploring this World Heritage as well. Now, this can be also done with the ITMO model 6.2, so that we can arrange this with the Cambodian government and also the other stakeholders, so that we can contribute to the greenhouse reduction, and also we contribute to the Korea's NDC. And the future, we should not stop in the two-wheeled e-mobility in the motorcycle, and then we're now more interested in the future model of the four-wheel electric vehicle model here. Now, all the countries have somehow the electric vehicle model here. However, developing countries are not on board yet. I think this is an opportunity, because current model of e-vehicle, which is based on the unidirectional charging model from charger to the car, is already outdated old model. Next generation model will be car can be used, is exactly car batteries should be used as an ESS, energy storage system. In other words, simply speaking, you charge your car when the electricity load is off-peak and less burdensome and with a cheaper price. And then later, when we reach the peak time, when the electricity price is higher, that you can take the electricity from the car. So you just leave the car in the car park, and that your car will actually earn money. Are we on the same page? Okay, once again. You charge the car with $2, and then you sell the electricity from the car by $4. If you do it one day. So every day you can actually earn money. So what's the secret? The secret is the price differential. Secret is the price differential and peak and off-peak load to the grid. So future model should be like this. However, in Korea, in US, in Europe, we don't have any of this model. We already have the backbone of car charging system in the developed countries. However, developed countries, they use the car only the means of transportation, and they only give the burden to the grid, but not relieving the burden to the grid. So the next model, if you have not started this electric vehicle charging model, then I think you should use the vehicle-to-grid model, should be considered for newly established e-vehicle ecosystem. So do not just take the car battery as a means of transportation, but as one of the solutions to relieve the burden on the grid, especially for the peak hours. We're talking about climate change and the more hot weather in the developing countries. If the developing countries want to introduce this system, you should consider system. To be able to do that, we need a smarter car. And we need the smarter charging stations. And we need all those institutional reform involved in that. So New Horizon is coming. However, we already started in Korea. We already started in the United States. Are we going to replace it? So this is a very challenging issue, actually. But if we have not started, do not just start and think. Before you start, we have to think and plan and introduce the new system. So it's like all the countries now using cellular system, but previously, when the fixed line system, telephone was prevailing, and then not many people were gaining actually access to the fixed line system. Now with the cellular, everybody is accessible to the telecommunication here. Okay, so this is the horizon. Now in the US, the 500,000 school buses across the US could use the EV battery powerhouse. And then also Hyundai and Dutch with Drive Solar, they launch energy system of the future in new trade. They're all focusing on using the car battery as ESS. So this is a future model, actually. Okay, that's all I have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. Now, our final panelist, Mr. Leo Do-Hoon Kim, is currently CEO at ARX Praxis and an adjunct professor of future strategy methodology at KAIST, the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. As a data scientist and social anthropologist, I believe Mr. Kim can offer us unique insights on dialing down polarization by addressing the agency gap and tackling misperceptions. Mr. Kim, over to you, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Anne. And I very briefly considered if I may also stand there, but I realized that if I stand there, some people over there will not see me, so I'd rather stay here. Okay, so you might doubt why I'm here. I'm the CEO of a private company, and I was actually recommended by Amnesty organization that we had worked a few years ago. And sometimes we commit to some public affairs, and quite a few times we deliver some data-based insights to the public. We collaborated with the newspapers over the last 14 years with about 200 coverages of articles, and some of them had, I believe, had some impact in the society. So I want to talk about it, and actually, regarding dialing down polarization, actually I was intrigued by the term Pedro delivered in his presentation, democracy paradox. So what is really happening? And what does it matter? And what should we do? That is all about the core theme of my presentation. So you might be, as we are now very much exposed to the outcome of the data science, you might be rather familiar with this kind of diagram. There are a lot of depictions of like this showing the communication pattern of two different groups with a different political inclination. So usually this depiction shows the communication between tweet users who are either prone to Republicans or the Democrats. So you can see there is a polarization. Those who support Democrats wouldn't talk with Republicans very much. And this kind of cross communication is diminishing very quickly. It wasn't to be so about 15 years ago when there was the progressive internet community. There is a high expectation, you remember, there is a high expectation of a more refined, developed form of democracy. So with the help of IT, now we will have a far more diverse and comprehensive communication that will really foster democracy. That didn't happen, as we all know. There is a book, a famous book called Social Warming, so like global warming. There is a heating up temperature of conflict on the globe, mediated by the social media and some other IT tools. Why is it happening? From our experience as a company that started social analytics, which was one of the forerunners in the world, we have observed a pattern. And it wasn't to be so from the beginning. There are a lot of genuine communications, really deep reflections, real zeal for a more just world and something like that. And some ordinary people would quickly talk to some renowned people, reputable people, in a very casual manner, and they really develop some ideas. And some people saw the potential and the danger of this kind of communication. From that on, as we were equipped with monitoring platforms and technologies, we could monitor some kind of a mobilization, intentional mobilization of some miscommunication. So there will be fake news, some misinformations that is deliberately spread over the world, in the nation as well. So it's a kind of mobilization of new resources, acknowledging, recognizing the potential of the internet. And from then on, the scene started to averse, as we here observing now. Sorry for the language. I have a lot of excerpts of the newspaper articles that we had to work with, Korean newspaper. This is one of the excerpts that we worked with the JoongAng newspaper in the beginning of this year. And we actually analyzed the communicative, discursive pattern of the two presidential candidates in America. And what we saw was basically Trump blames a lot of people. There are communist liars and the Democrats, and also those bastard immigrants are really depriving your jobs. Those lesbians and the gays are really diluting our family values, things like that. And as an educated, more or less progressive people, people don't like that. But let's, before blaming it, before criticizing, let's look at the discursive pattern we extracted from some kind of semantic analysis from Biden's speeches over years. But he believes there is a kind of discursive pattern that we extracted with our computer algorithm that he believes if America advances technology and safeguards against some competitors, then they will spill over in a natural manner. So there will be more creation of jobs. And there will be, if we really consider gender issues, some climate change issues, then there will be a more just society overall. How does it sound to you? Does it sound rational enough? It may be rational from the perspective of elites. But from what we discovered is that after this data analysis, we actually interviewed some American white males who are not particularly privileged or highly educated. And what they say is, this discourse of Biden is not really reflecting the frustration and poverty, worsening poverty of their situation. And once, about 30 years ago, they remember their parents were not highly educated, but they could have good, decent houses and cars and good family with some respect as the breadwinner and parents. Is no longer happening. So how does that rationalistic elite's perspective of the future sound to those people? This kind of cognitive gap is widening, and from that cognitive gap, anger is growing, and some political groups know how to use it. I think that's the scene, what is happening, not only in America, but also in many countries, including Korea. So there is growing anger that is being mobilized and manipulated. So in Korea, well, we have had worked with broadcasts and broadcast companies and some other news medias, and what we found out was we conducted sentiment analysis of the discourse in social media in Korea. And what are the targets of anger? It's usually labor union and also refugees. So there is, you will be familiar with this kind of populist anger, but what really lies here is there is a growing tribalism. Since people are getting, feeling more and more insecure, they want to be themselves with their own tribes. So this kind of a growing mentality of tribalism really target against the others. And that's what is happening in the political and social scene, not only in Korea, but also, again, on the globe, at least in developed countries. So as I was working as a professor, adjunct professor in KAIST, I published a book with a collaboration with my colleagues. And I also conducted data science of some opinion leaders in various fields. And what I found out from the semantic analysis, and that is adapted to the future wheel, is actually this feature was derived from semantic analysis, and there is no possibility of consensus among between different group of people, because they are so much entrenched and embedded in their own tribe, and they don't want to really communicate or make consensus, because as far as they fight against the others, they gain political power and recognition. So they have some game theory-based interest that they should go on in this fashion, rather than really trying to make some concession, some serious concession. Okay. So what is happening? We are talking about climate change. We are talking some measures to make this world better. But actually in Korean political scene, social political scene, this kind of a work for climate change, as you work with Amnesty, for example, developing some solar panels that were painted in a very bizarre way. Oh, that solar panel is dominated by China. How can you really work with China? Those pro-Chinese, you are kind of a communist bastards. This kind of distorted political discourse prevailed in online communication in Korea. So when I work with the Amnesty, we advised instead of naively delving into the energy policy, rather divert your strategy to be more global oriented task with human rights in the affair in Myanmar, etc. Because at the time, Koreans also sought some world recognition, and they wanted to be part of that, rescue or that support agency, which was more or less clever, but also sad, because there are a lot of things to do, but we can't do it in a straightforward way. Okay, why is it happening? Well, beforehand, it is a gradual process. It never happened in a day. Over the last 15 years, as a company and also agency to monitor the social phenomenon and also deliver some important report to the government, presidency, and the news media, we have observed a worsening pattern of misogyny, some internal conflicts, and etc. Why is that happening? Well, in Korea, there is a strong, apparently ultra-right youngster group that was called Ilbe, and there was so much misogynic, violent, really criticizing the liberal values, and etc. So many political scientists and social scientists very easily regarded them as ultra-right youngsters. It was a kind of a political perspective. From my perspective, with some discourse analysis, we discovered something more fundamental is working beyond some political manifestation. Actually, they didn't have much political integrity. Their political stance was rather diverse, and they didn't really were into any kind of a political conviction. What mattered, though, was there was a commonality in the attitude, how to live in the society, accepting from the Dawkins, Richard Dawkins term. There was some kind of attitude of evolutionary stable strategy, which means in Korea, in order to succeed, you should work hard. You should really study hard. And also, you should be rather compliant to the authority. Don't rebel. Okay? Be compliant and work hard. That was the key message to survive and also succeed in the society. But that norm has been broken because there is very limited resources to distribute, to share to those youngsters. Most of the resources are now occupied and also shrinking. That's why they don't have resources to get. After this failure of ESS, evolutionary stable strategy, what is left is just anger. Okay, we're gonna destroy everything. We don't want foreigners, we don't want refugees, we don't want women. Okay, we just want to destroy something. That is a kind of a lingering anger that is growing in the society. But how does it sound to you? It's an only Korean affair. Okay, and there is also some peculiar part of Korean society as well. Over the last half a century, Koreans worked really hard in order to escape poverty. So it has become a wealthy country with some advanced technology, which is laudable. But we sacrificed something. If you look at the semantic map, in the center, Korean people really focus on money. So if you get money, something will be secured. But that doesn't happen. They're sacrificing other relationships and some other social values that is needed for the sustainability and collaboration in the society, which is getting to be lacking. Okay, I'll be rather try to be brief, but after the pandemic, the World Bank announced systemic resilience really matters in order to recover. So my question was, how can you actually measure the systemic resilience? So we conducted research collecting various variables from OECD and WEF and simulate them and developing index and score to actually evaluate the level of systemic resilience in different countries and also see what is the weakness in terms of the score in each country. So I can basically say that at the time, Germany was the most robust with the good leadership of the Chancellor Merkel, but also they lacked some economic foundation. There was some economic sector is getting weakening. But also in the case of Korea, there are some fundamental problems in education. Korea is highly regarded as a country that is successful in higher education, but there is a flip side. They are very much lean towards gamesmanship, which is just gaining score with some consultancies, some quick ways to memorize things, and they're really solving some questions. But does it really matter to you in terms of the human development? Are they really prepared to commit to the community and contribute something to the public? It is a different matter. There are a growing number of cherry-picking people just getting scores, and it is not really helping the community. So also, there is a worsening condition from the quantitative measures, worsening condition of equality, both in economic and social terms. So women are not getting equal the salary as men in this country, but also in terms of the treatment, attitude, everything, it is not very equal. That is really worsening the situation because people feel they are disempowered and disrespected. And this is also causing a lot of anger. So how can we really deal with it? So in the presidential report, I warned, if you don't really make this A model foundation, sorry for the language, but if you do not really make a serious commitment to the educational reform in the society and reform the distribution structure in the economy, something bad will happen in the culture and the industry as well, because a monopolized industry cannot sustain without the support of the sustainable societal foundation. So we want, if something goes wrong, it will start with diplomacy. And if government doesn't function well, then you will try to find a scapegoat, aggravating the social conflict. So how does it sound to you? So we need cure. And we can talk about climate change, and we are recently engaged in Gyeonggi province in Korea to use artificial intelligence and really how to use artificial intelligence to mitigate the problem of the climate change. And in this case, we try to translate these big data, artificial intelligence, and environmental problems into socio-economic problem. So in this case, what the AI imaging and the analysis shows is there is an overlapping of the socio-economic problem and the environmental crisis. So if you are poor in Korea, you get hotter in the summer. You feel hotter. Definitely the poor area is hotter in heat map. Also, if you are vulnerable in terms of economic situation, there are more floods and there are more disasters to happen in the area. So we are now going to map those things with the AI and really show the overlapping pattern. So in this case, some AI or the big data literacy can really help people to understand lurking problems, underlying causes, and they contribute to some solutions. But I'd like to pose a more fundamental question. Is this kind of a technical solution enough to really solve the problem on the globe? Because there is, as you said, an echo chamber of the conflict. And there are something, even though people here try to do something, we sometimes feel that we are swayed by more stupid and violent people. So Why is it happening? And how can we really cope with it? As a sociology student and as an undergraduate, I partly studied postmodernism in 1990s, and I was educated, dismiss the Enlightenment, and believe in diversity, relativism, and you shouldn't teach or preach to someone. That was a kind of a core message after reading thousands of pages of those Jean-François Lyotard and some other philosophers and thinkers. But after 30 years, more than 20 years, what I realized is maybe we need a new form of alignment. There should be a new way of utilizing, integrating new form of knowledge with the political leadership. How can we do that? Because we cannot really rely on current leadership and social problems. So let's be prepared, because in the recent Netflix, there was a famous movie called The Three Body Problems. And after the frustrated scientists, the Chinese scientists, called for aliens to invade the Earth, because she believes we cannot solve our problems ourselves. Before they come, let us do something better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fascinating points. First of all, I have to apologize. We are a little bit over time, but I would like to beg your indulgence. Please give me another 10 to 15 minutes to finalize. I know that these presentations really have raised many questions. So again, I would like to open the floor to invite one question for each presenter. Let me look around. So there, yes, please.
I would like to address the question to Mr. Kim. You spoke about the Korean society, about how education, which has been successful, but created problems within the society in a certain manner. So the point is how we can reverse trends. Which would be your main suggestions in reversing trends, except inviting aliens to resolve problems? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question. Please, let's hold on just for one moment before diving into some answers here. Is there any question for Mr. Kwak as well on international development and multilateralism? If it's not in the room, then allow me to go back to a question that was posed by an offline participant, Mr. Choi Kyung-han from the Korea Green Growth Trust Fund, and he is a monitoring and evaluation associate. Mr. Choi is asking, amid the current situation of the world being divided into the global West, East, and South, how can the Republic of Korea enhance and boost its international cooperation with the global South? What would be the silver bullet for us, if there is one? Thank you very much for this, and allow me to pass over to Mr. Kim, perhaps first, and then Mr. Kwak.
I'm not sure if my response, my domestic solution will be applicable globally. But what I believe is we need to change the incentive structure of education rather than saying, oh, this part of the exam is wrong, this part of the selection process should be changed. Those are very tiny things. More fundamental thing is now we are expecting our life expectancy far longer than before. We might live over 100 years. So let us ask ourselves, is it eligible that we allow some person who are 18 or 19 years old to enter some prestigious university and believe they are elites? We should have a far longer education, some mutual interaction with the society to naturally grow elites and good citizens. But in Korea, the problem is we imbue too much power and prestige to a few number of people, young people who enter undergraduate university and believing they are elites. So a lot of problems happen because parents will do everything. It is not just genuine, study. They employ consultants. They do a private education. So there is actually a strong correlation between the household wage and also the number of the people who enter prestigious universities in Korea. So they economic index and achievement of education very much coincides in Korea. But I think it is also the same in America. So many people are indebted for their higher education. Is it really just? Can't we rather change the incentive as a structure rather than pinpointing some tiny system? That is my fundamental question.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to give you this.
This is okay.
Yeah? All right. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you
Kwon.
for the million-dollar question. If I reinterpreted it, I think it sounds like how we can reposition as a new kid on the block in the international development as a donor. Korea's position is very unique right now in the year 2024 because we are one of the few donors that deeply committed to increase our development cooperation, ODA. And secondly, Korea is one of the few countries still focusing on the manufacturing and industry out of all those OECD members. Our industries are not hollowed out yet, and also we have very strong science and technology sector and R&D sector as well. However, there are also downsides. As a new kid, our delivery channel is very weak. Our capacity to develop the project and our implementation skills, and also even the financial instrument is still very weak. When I'm talking about the financial instrument, this means very critical, because in my previous project that I explained, that we had a little difficulty in finding those investors in developing countries from the Korean financial sources, because Korean venture capitals are very reluctant to invest in the developing country, and also Korean public sector do not still have the development finance institutions yet. We don't have that sort of instrument, IFC type instrument yet here. So we are still lagged behind in terms of this kind of more financial side, also the delivery side as well. So there are pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages as well. However, one thing is clear, we are very committed and ready to onboard to our more deeper and more inclusive engagement towards the global south, especially over such issues of climate change or immigration issues, and also trade and technology issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all the panelists and also to the audience for this very interactive discussion. I think all the presentations and also the discussion have raised fascinating points. Allow me to just very quickly make a final round, having listened to each other, and ask for your final thoughts and key takeaways. If possible, not longer than 1 minute each from all the panelists, and then I would be very happy to give closing remarks over to Pedro. Could we please start with the lady on the panel, with Ms. Ryu? Over to you, please.
Thank you. I'm not going to bore you with another financing solutions here. When I thought of our panel members, we represent a different part of the society and different part of problems and solutions. This emphasizes that all the work ahead of us cannot be a solo action. It will require close cooperation. So thank you, UNDP, and also Pedro for this informative launch event to bring us together to delve into entrenched problems ahead of us. I think we'll need to take a baby step, and new way of partnerships is going to be an essential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, let's just follow down the table.
Okay. 네, 앞서서 말씀드렸던 것처럼
As I have mentioned previously, when it comes to international cooperation, the approach by the public sector and private sector is very different when it comes to global public goods, but it's something that we have to do on both sides as well, regardless of differences. As my fellow panelists have mentioned, and I learned actually a lot through today's panel discussion, but I take those learnings back, and I want to use this as a starting point to create more opportunity for cooperation. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to emphasize the importance of qualitative or quality side of assessment when we do that. I mean, Pedro have done remarkable work, and the UNDP's HDI report has been always an enlightening guide for us to follow the trend here. But as he has mentioned, we have gone through the COVID-19, and there are some issues raised in many corners of the world in terms of quality. For instance, in terms of education, there are kids not properly learned the early school ages in their own mother tongue or mathematics when they were first year or second year of the schools, elementary schools. Now they're grown up, they are in the 5/5 or 6th year of elementary school, on the verge of they going to the pre-secondary school, and that gives a more crisis to the fundamental structure of the society, especially in the human development side. So let's focus on targeted, more customized, and quality side of the issues so that we can address all this. Thank you.
Yes, I feel grateful to share ideas here. It's such a wonderful moment. We could have a communication with a lot of great minds here. And I hope that our efforts will not be too much compartmentalized. We believe that we are doing something great, something important. But if it becomes too much technical and becomes just an isolated project, it won't be really integrated and cause more social effects. So how can we really grow our influence with some concerted efforts? I think that will be the ongoing question that we should solve together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really, a lot food for thought beyond the day-to-day that should really inform our work, our joint work going forward. Pedro, may I please ask you for some final thoughts?
Very, very briefly, just a word of thanks to all of you that participated and contributing to the debate. The vision for our report was in part to put forward a report that was less about the what we should be doing, in part because to a large extent we have the resources, we have the technology, we have the knowledge to address many of the challenges that we confront, but we are seemingly getting stuck on the how. And in a sense, the report may be frustrating because it poses more questions than answers. And I think that the discussion that we've had here today was in the same spirit, in some cases posing questions as opposed to necessarily with very precision indicating what we should be doing next. But I think that if we don't pose the right questions and aim at doing the right diagnostic, we will keep on failing, not so much on the what, but on the how. And so I think the conversation today was another step forward in understanding how to get the how right. Thank you.
Thank you. A big thank you again to the panel, to our participants in the room, and also the offline participants. Just allow me to give back to Hedget so that we can conclude this morning event.
Sure, thank you, Anne. And I don't want to stand in the way of the nice lunch that's being prepared in the back of the room. So all I have left to say is thank you again to all of the participants in this room. And let's not also forget all of those that are following us online. So thank you very much for your engaging discussions. And we will be sharing a recording of the event and the presentation materials on the UNDP Seoul Policy Center website. So please feel free to share those resources with your colleagues and friends. So yeah, let me invite our lunch participants to please stay on and enjoy the buffet and use the occasion to network with each other. So thank you again and hope to cross paths again. Thank you.